I'm going to do something that I don't normally do, which is talk about all three readings, because today all the readings are fairly short. So I'm going to talk about all three of them. In the first reading from the 63rd chapter of the book of the prophet Isaiah, it talks about human nature and talks about, in kind of not a very glowing way, said all of our deeds are like polluted rags. The one thing about human nature is that human nature is very complex. You have firefighters who are willing to go into burning buildings. You have police officers who are willing to go into a very, very dangerous situation in order to stop a crime, stop a killer, stop something going on that can be very dangerous to them. And so many of them who do that aren't even religious, or not specifically religious, but yet there's something within them that makes them say that there's a need, there's a big need, and then they can be the ones who can do it. And it's not for fame or it's not for glory, because even if you do somehow get a little bit of publicity on it, it's really not worth the danger. If you were weighing it, practically, you wouldn't see the danger. The danger way outweighs any fame or any publicity or anything like that would come of it. But yet they do it. But yet, when we think about all human nature, so we think about that good, that godly part of our human nature, but then we also think about the petty, the jealous, the envious, the people who are full of pride, full of arrogance, who do good works, to be like polluted rags. They come in at the end, they, put maybe a little sprinkling on the dessert and want full credit for the product, so you see that as well. So you see both things. You see the good that God has placed into our hearts, and yet you see that evil or that petty or the sinful really there present in our life. In 1 Corinthians, in the second reading, Paul talks about that grace, that God in His grace came to the church in Corinth. And when we think about grace, it's that unearned, that unmerited favor of God. And what St. Paul will later go on to say is that it was not because of human eloquence or human abilities of St. Paul that they ended up coming to Christ, but it was really through two things. One, through signs and wonders, the miraculous that were done in their midst. Then the power of the Holy Spirit changing their hearts and making them think about the things of God. Because certainly, if it was the Gentiles, they wouldn't care about the Hebrew Scriptures and how Jesus was truly the Messiah and really came about and really was able to fulfill all of the prophecies. They wouldn't care about that. So how did they come? They came through the signs and wonders, those acts of power of God, and through the conviction of the Holy Spirit that they came to have a relationship with God. In the gospel, what we have that third gospel regarding preparations, because first we had the virgins, the 10 who were 5 of whom were wise, 5 of whom were foolish, 5 were prepared, 5 were unprepared. Then we had the story of the landowner who was dispensing the talents of silver. Some were wise and were trading with those talents, and then one just put it in the ground and said he didn't care, or was fearful in a human fearful way about the landowner, so he did nothing. And then we had Christ the King, and now we're going back to that idea of preparation, the idea of a householder who's putting the servants in charge and is going to return at an unknown time. So they have to be watchful. They can't just say, well, the he's going to be away for a while, so it doesn't really matter. I can do whatever I want. I can, go ahead and just, do whatever I feel like doing. No, there's going to come at an unknown time, and is he going to either find them prepared or unprepared? And I think that that's a good, even though it is the third gospel in 4 weeks on preparation, I think it is truly a good thing to do, because it helps us to understand that if we're just going to get away from those kind of pious thoughts, those kind of nice holy thoughts, well, next year I want to be more prayerful. Well, what's your preparation? How do you intend to go about that? I'm going to try to be kinder to my wife or my kids. Well, that's great, but again, how are you going to do that? What's your preparation? I'm going to try to develop a better relationship with God. Again, nice thought, but what are you going to do to prepare? What are you going to do to think about it? Because if not, then it does almost become like filthy rags. It's just, this thought that just comes, oh, I feel good about myself because I've thought this nice thought. But unless you put it into action, unless you really think about ways we can develop a better relationship with our spouse or family, or we think about how do we develop a better relationship with God, maybe through adoration, maybe through reading the scriptures, maybe through joining a Bible study, maybe through joining a men's group, Knights of Columbus, all these kind of things that help us, women's group, all these kind of things that help us develop that kind of a relationship with God. They're going to get and to encourage and to assist one another. Then it just becomes like this nice thought. So again, that idea of Advent is taking those thoughts. Maybe we need to go to confession, but then taking that plan of action. Okay, what am I going to do? What time works for me, and how am I going to get there to make sure that I get to confession? All these things helping us to take what is a good thought and then bringing it into action, so that we truly are prepared and not just there with our lamps, but no oil in the lamp. Thanks, and God bless.